Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from a lush taiga. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, to another week of the podcast. We've got a lot going on. We've got a Grand Prix recap. We've got a race preview for the British Grand Prix coming up this weekend. We've got some League of Legends, some Magic the Gathering. Justin, it's good to see you. A lot going on for us to talk about this week.
Yeah, we've kind of got a packed week. Good to see you too. Coming hot off of another, just serendipitous weekend. Let's get into the Rose, Thorn, and Seed. I want to hear all about it.
Sounds good. So with this past weekend, there were, well, I guess not really technically the weekend, but yesterday with the 4th of July holiday, we went tubing with a group of our friends and everything up the Delaware River, and so we're going through and all. It was just nice, relaxing time. We left Senna home, we drove up, tubed, and then hopped in the car and headed home to her, and it worked. Like, it was one of the longest times we've left her without someone checking in, and she was perfectly fine. We had tired her out enough and all. But overall, just a good time. And so that is my rose for this week. It was a lot of fun, but my thorn kind of ties into it too. And it's more like it's this, it frustrates me that I get frustrated. And I feel like I've had this as a thorn before, but I sometimes just let my frustration just really get to me. And so we were heading up to go tubing and everything, and we had packed most of our stuff together. We thought we had everything. We're driving on the way. I was going to pick up beer for to float down the river and all, but we're heading up there at about 10 in the morning. So the first couple places that were right in town that we could have stopped weren't open yet. So I'm we'll find beer along the way. There's gotta be, in this hour-long drive, one place that's selling beer. Didn't see a single one the entire way. So I was we're getting close, and I was just felt unprepared. And so I was I wanted to have those. I forgot a couple other things. I was do we have the towels? They were fortunately in my trunk from when we had left them previously in the trunk, clean, but still, nice. It wasn't because we packed them. And I just got so irritated with myself. I was wanted to just go up, relax, have fun and everything, and I just felt I was so unprepared, and I was come on, you know better. I didn't think to bring my speaker. I didn't think to, all these different things that I could have just, gotten together a little bit ahead of time and thought through. And I just didn't. And so it, bummed my mood for the first little, bit until we were, got out on the river and all. But I just don't like that it got to me that much, where I was, irritated. Instead of just being oh, hey, it is what it is. I'm just going to be here hanging out with my friends floating down a river. It's going to be a great time anyway, which is what happened. I'm this would have been, I should have done this. I should have brought that and all this stuff. And I'm I just don't like letting those things get to me that much, because I don't want it to affect my mood and then thereby affect other people. So
sure. Now, how does it tend to how does that frustration kind of manifest? Do you have conversations in your head? Do you kind of rage out loud and just let it kind of trickle out? Are you name calling? How does it tend to manifest?
I just kind of stew, and then I'm just in a grumpy mood. My responses aren't very cheery. I'm just kind of meh, in a down kind of mood. And it's not and I'll say little things I just can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I
Right.
forgot that, and stuff. Like, it's like directed at myself, but the energy still goes out, which is like not cool. And so I don't fortunately turn into this maniac screaming and hollering and stuff like that, which is I probably would have when I was like younger. But so there's been progress, but I just
Nice.
like the progress I want to see is like doing the thing that takes the extra little bit of time to prepare instead of the progress being, well, at least I didn't get so mad at myself when I did this thing again.
Sure.
So, and I like don't like to put the blame about those things on anything else, like my ADHD or whatever. Like, I should know that at this point in life that I need to make a list of things that I want to bring and then just like do that. Like, I've learned that enough times, so I don't want to like redirect that. I'm like, no, I did this again, so I need to figure that out. But like I said, still had a really nice time tubing. I just wish I had that like, it is what it is mindset from the get-go.
Sure.
So, but
That's definitely understandable. Continue. Sorry.
yeah. Oh no, but just to move along to my seed for this week. I am going to be babysitting my nephew this Saturday for the first time, and it's a little frustrating, but not a big deal. But my sister had been like, "Hey, can you babysit on X date?" And I was like, "Sure, no problem." And then like 2 weeks ago, I reached out to her. She hadn't told me like any information other than like what day. And so I reached out to her. I'm like, "Hey, when are we planning to, like, when should I be there? Like, what time do you need?" Like, all just trying to get some details. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I have to start getting ready," because she's in the wedding that they're going to, hence the babysitting. And so she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be starting to get ready at 9 a.m. So if you could be here by 8:30 in the morning, oh, and we'll try not to be too late." And so I had no idea that I was going to be babysitting my nephew from like 8:30 in the morning till potentially like 10:30, 11 at night, like a 14 hours of babysitting when I've never cared for a baby in my life. And he is 7 months old. So it's coming up. I'm like, it'll be, I think, fun to like chill with my little baby nephew for the day and all, but I am slightly concerned about my capabilities as a caretaker of a child. It's a lot, and it's a long time to not have any like real experience.
Yeah, but if you've seen the movies, they'll put like a little list of important phone numbers up on the fridge, like they'll leave money out for a pizza. I feel like it won't be that bad. You just got to remember support the back of the head when lifting. I mean,
I'm gonna get this
you
kid
know,
running by the end of the day. Hasn't walked yet. I'm gonna have him full on sprinting around the house.
not saying dada, just saying Aaron,
Yeah,
just like
uncle. Yeah.
very clear,
Yeah, just
enunciating.
crystal clear, and can't say anything else, but can say
Mm-hmm.
Aaron perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
That would be brutal to have like your kid's first words be someone else's name when you've just been like prompting them with like dada dada, and then you come in just right in that moment, say it a couple times, and then steal the moment from them.
yeah, that's
Beautiful.
I think that's what I should go for. But yeah, I'm not extremely nervous. A little bit nervous. But yeah, I'm hoping that all goes smoothly, and maybe that will give me a little more confidence for any future babysitting that I have to do, or am
Sure.
not have to, but am requested to do.
yeah, just make sure the food bowl's filled up. Make sure they have water.
Yeah, the little hamster drip bottle thing.
Yeah, or like I've seen the ones that were just 2-liter bottles that you would like screw into like a little thing, and it would just like,
There you go.
yeah, just auto water.
Yeah, so it should be a good time, but that is my rose thorn and seed for this week.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about the your little nephew there. My rose here for this week is more like it's I would call it unintangible, but there are sometimes I get these like little weird feelings, the way the sky looks with the temperature, with the this, it like feels like I'm somewhere else in some way where in some way there was like a memory made about a day or a moment or something or like a feeling or one that I've had a bunch of times that is kind of like you have some kind of memory for it now. I was pulling like groceries out of the trunk to like bring them upstairs. Really nice warm night. The We have like stairs up to our apartment and we've got like effectively gravel like out back. So just the sound of gravel, the stairs, the warm air, it big time gives me like beach house vibes. My aunt and uncle have, I don't know if they still do. I'm pretty sure they still do. They have a beach house down in on the beach somewhere, and we would go when we were a kid, and it was exactly like that amount of steps. We would all, we would get down there a little later at night. It'd be warm as hell. Obviously, it's summer. We'd all have our bags and we'd shuffle up the stairs and go in. So, like, very much so, just in that moment, I was like, oh man, it just feels like I'm at the beach. And
Gotcha.
we
Okay.
have had that feeling here before. Like, our wireless our wireless name is Vacation Home. It has like when you have the windows open, a nice breeze coming through. It's just got like that Airbnb like bungalow type vibe. So just really enjoying, basically just kind of like really enjoying the summer and the nice weather, these kind of things.
Nice.
um my thorn here for the week. My therapist is moving to another state. So there'll be a period of like, well, we got to make sure that like the schedule's open and blah 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 and blah blah blah. So I got to wait for a call from like the scheduling lady and whatever. So treatment's going to be in flux for a little while, so I'm not like too like jazzed on that obviously.
That's
But
fair.
yeah. Uh in the year that I got to know my therapist who I had, like she was great. I think I learned a lot. She was very helpful. I wish her well, moving forward, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, just kind of like, man, I was hoping we were in it for the long haul, but maybe this could be like cool and interesting. Just get different different viewpoints.
Yeah, and I think it's also good in the sense that like you'll kind of get a little short kind of test period of like, oh, like how am I doing without this
Hmm.
check in every however often you do it. And that can kind of let you gauge just like how you feel your progress is, or like maybe you'll just think about like what's going on and all a little bit more like frequently and everything
Hmm.
to like as a check in. So I'm hoping it goes as smoothly as I imagine it. But I know that that's one of those things that once you're like out of it, sometimes you're like, I should probably get back there.
Yeah, yeah, you feel the you know yeah, you just feel the time in between a little bit more. So yeah, I'll just be looking forward to get back to treatment whenever that's possible. And then, dude, big seed,
Okay.
huge seed, massive. All right, do you remember a long time ago when I was talking about this idea that came across and me and Buddha were talking about of like taking apart our commander decks and
Yeah.
like reimagining them. So you take a bunch of cards apart, or you take a bunch of decks apart, and now you have a bunch of cards in binders. And then you're like, well, what can I do with these cards? You're like, I'm not sure what to do with these cards. So you take the cards out of the binder, then you put them into a box. And then you're like, what do I do with the cards in the box? Now you just have a box with a lot of cards. Now you have a couple boxes with a couple of cards. You're like, what do I do with this stuff? So, and I've been telling you all about it, you know, going through shimmying and shaking, emptying things out, you know, selling to the game store and this and that. So, building up some store credit, really like really zooming in on like, what do I want to do here? And I had the opportunity to unload some booster boxes that I'd purchased a while ago. Now I found a buyer for those, cash in on that. So just really kind of like entering into a new era of like collecting and playing, being that now with John, me and him are talking about Pioneer a good amount. There are just I'm finding more things that are interesting in Magic other than just Commander. So I got to think of like, well, how do we get to play this stuff, right? So I'm thinking about, you know, turning liquid into gold kind of thing. And with that, stored up a bunch of store credit over the last probably like year and a half, 2 years. I've been talking about dual lands from the third edition revised era. I was fortunate enough to be gifted just old boxes of Magic cards from an old client of mine. And she was just very pleased with like our therapeutic relationship. We got along very well, like had things in common. So she just gave me her Magic cards that she had when she was a kid or whatever, like when she was like a teen, that she just didn't use anymore. I talked to her about them. Or I talked to her about Magic, and she was like, "Oh, I have these cards. Like, let me just..." Right? There were some heaters in this collection, part of which is some of these dual lands that I'm like, man, wouldn't it be sweet to just complete this collection?
Oh yeah, I remember you talking about completing the collection of the dual lands. Yeah.
You're goddamn right. So with all of this shimmying and shaking that I've been doing, I went to the LGS today. They had a Taiga in the glass fucking case, hard case, in another one, lockbox, inside of a chest, you know, on guard, behind, you know,
behind bulletproof glass, and yeah.
Right. You know, I had to solve the Sphinx as a riddle, and I've been eyeing it. I've been saving, preparing. I went in, made the purchase today for a fucking beautiful. It is beautiful.
So it's graded and everything in the case.
It's not graded. It's not in like a PSA
Okay.
case. But
I feel like I've seen those a lot, so I'm like the graded.
Oh, that'd
cases.
be wild. Yeah, that'd be wild. Not one of those.
Gotcha.
I actually want to play with this one.
Right, which is why I was like curious, because I know you were running on and on with how locked up it was, but also I was like, what level actually is it?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna dump soda all over and just play with it and just not care about any of it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, dude, it is beautiful. So like, I guess if you were to like get it graded, authenticated, they would say it was lightly played. Just some minor stuff on the back. The front face of the card though is like immaculate. The centering is beautiful. The coloring like unblemished, bro. It is truly the most beautiful Magic card I've ever seen. And you know, just I'm obviously biased, but it just felt so good to come to kind of like the end of one journey and like the start of like kind of a new one where I'm kind of thinking about Magic in a whole different way, thinking about collecting in a whole different way, and just very excited about some of these old ideas finally coming to a head, and then maybe like moving on to some like other new and exciting things. That land will hopefully be kind of the centerpiece to the Najeela deck that I've been working on for a long time, where it'll just be the best land in the deck. Red and green is right where you want to be for that list. So man, I was just over the moon, super happy walking out of that place, and I'm just like excited to kind of see where Magic can take me now.
Yeah, that's cool. And to like now you don't have like a certain target. It's like just kind of where the wind takes you. Like whatever the next like thought you have, whether it is something for playing or maybe it is something that you're looking at as like a collector's kind of thing down the line. That's definitely a cool spot to be in. And this card does look pretty sweet. So it's the Taiga Revised Edition.
Yep.
Okay,
So
that
you
is
have
with the mountains and the slanted hill and the
Yep, just all covered in forest. Like the art is beautiful, and like I said, just the centering of the card, just how it presents. It's actually stunning. Just like the card itself is in great condition, I should say.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a cool looking card there.
Well, I appreciate you letting me share that with you, but enough about pretty cardboard here. Let's kind of get into the meat of the episode, eh?
Sounds good. So the quick hitters this week are all kind of in the F1 vein. So the first biggest news of the week and day is the 2024 F1 calendar has been released. We have 24 races for 2024. And so it's we have the 3 U.S. Grand Prix on there with Miami, Austin, and Las Vegas. They say that they have attempted to make the schedule a bit more, I forget how they referred to it, but like I guess like regionalized, where you're not traveling as much, but then they still have these weird odd ones in there. Which I would imagine they're like slowly shifting as contracts with like, so like the Miami Grand Prix is on there, of course. And so I feel like that's like kind of in a set spot as opposed to being able to like shift the date too much, where maybe in a year or two you can more, because you have the Middle East with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia to start off.
Is that where the test is again, in Bahrain?
Yes. And so with the with this year, those two, there's actually another small interesting bit, but the races will be held on Saturday for both of those because of Ramadan. So we'll have 2 Saturday Grand Prix there to start off the season. But then, so you go from the Middle East to Australia, up to Japan, next door to China, and then you go to Miami, all the way across the world, about as far as you can go. Then back to Europe, where you have the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in Monaco, but then they hop back across to Canada, and then back to Spain. And so there's a couple of these little like one-offs where then like the rest of it kind of flows pretty well at like through Europe into the US Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas in Austin. That's like the next like real big jump they have. And then they bounce from like Austin to Mexico to Brazil to Vegas and then back over to the middle. So like there are sections of it that like flow pretty well, but then there's these one-offs that it's like you're hopping across the pond and back after one race. So
Yeah, and it's tough to predict like what exactly that is. I imagine all of these tracks, if they are the purpose-built tracks, there's likely one set of issues that come with that. If you're, building, what do they call that? Uh did I just use that phrase, purpose-built track, or just like a street track where like they have
yeah,
to build it in on the weekend.
right.
Like that could interfere with a bunch of other things as far as like city infrastructure planning goes, and
Or
like
like,
when
yeah,
like
like,
temperatures are proper to hold the race and all of these things.
yeah.
So that must be just one small part of the logistical nightmare that these like planning teams are facing when they're trying to put this season together. The one thing I was surprised to see was China on the schedule, and I didn't see is Russia on the schedule.
No, so Russia's not on the schedule still. China is um, still, I think, maybe up in the air kind of conversation.
Gotcha,
But I mean, this is,
gotcha.
it would be like this year potentially where China gets pulled out because we were supposed to have China this year
Right, right.
before they removed that from the schedule. So,
That's interesting. Yep. It's going to be 2024, so that means 2020, so that means 24 races. So then 2025, there'll be 25 races. We're just
yeah.
we're just matching the year to the amount of races, people. That's what's happening.
Just had to get there, and now we're smooth sailing.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so it's exciting to see the schedule and everything a little bit ahead of time. It gets me excited for next year. Just a hint. I know we have a ton of this year's racing to go, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing kind of how that flow works with some of the dates shifted around. Like Baku has moved way further back in the schedule, and also it'll be interesting to see, like you said, with temperatures and everything, how some of those races might change. But looking at some of the drivers for future teams and whatnot, it looks like Haas is going to continue on. At least they've kind of hinted that they're planning to just keep on with Magnussen and Hulkenberg for next year. So no big shifts expected for them. Then Christian Horner was saying that Daniel Ricciardo is looking very impressive on the simulator, and that he seems to be back to his old self a bit, very competitive in the virtual world, I think were
Whoa.
some of the terms, which gave me the same reaction where I was like, oh,
Yes,
all right,
sweet.
he's good at the video game version. Like,
He's
all right.
gaming, brother.
And not that it, like, obviously the Sims like are a part of the driver's like practice and everything, but for me to really, I need to see it on a real track to see what he's got. So when they have that test that they're planning to have him in later this year, then I'm like, okay, like that's when we'll get an actual idea about how he's doing.
I mean, he's obviously just going to be top of the timetables, just shredding those tires.
Oh yeah. So
He's hungry for it.
I mean, and at this point, I'm just not really sure where, again, he would kind of potentially slot back into the F1 grid.
Right.
Because the other kind of news that was like being discussed, or not really news, but discussion around Nick DeVries was essentially that Helmut Marko gave him until the mid-season break to kind of make some progress on his performances and all.
When is the mid-season break post? Post Silverstone.
No, so I think it's a or I guess he said 4 races. So we've got Silverstone.
And was that this
So
weekend?
that
He said
was,
that.
I think it was before. So this was before this past weekend. So we've
Okay, so
got,
Austria included.
yeah. So Austria, Great Britain, then we have Hungary, 2 weeks later, and Belgium the week after that. And then
Whoa.
it's the break after Belgium. We have a month off till the Netherlands. So
Damn.
till after Belgium, but the kind of most likely driver that's been talked about a little bit is Liam Lawson, who we had mentioned is one of the Red Bull drivers who's driven in a number of other series, has been pretty impressive in his drives, and is currently in second place in I think it was the Supercar series. So most likely option if that seat does change. But again, Nick DeVries has he still has 3 races that he can show some progress and all, but I have no idea what they're like, if there's a target of we want you to do XYZ, or if it's just like we want to see some improvements across the board. So
Well, maybe they just told him, we just need you to score 1 point. We just need 1 point out of you. Yuki's been able to do it. That means you should be able to do it. If you get 1 point before we fuck off after Belgium, man, do you think he can do it? Do you think he can deliver?
do I think
Just one?
do
Just
I
1
think
point.
he can? Yes. Do I think he, will? No. I think it would take the right set of circumstances for him to make it into the points.
Tough competition around his fights, or just skill diff?
I think the car is still pretty bad. It still is not the end. Like Yuki, I think most people think, barring this past weekend, that he has been driving kind of like very, very well throughout the season to have even put that car up in the points a couple times and like on the edge of it for so much of the season. I think a lot of people have been impressed by that, myself included, but for him to even get points there, like things had to fall in place a little bit. So for Nick to do it too, he's got to have like a great day and some other people to have some bad days or some DNFs or things like that, I feel like. So there's some potential for it to happen, but I'd give it like a 90-10 that he won't get a point. Like
Sure.
90% not going to.
Sure. So then, okay, he's not capable of getting a point. Helmut Marko knows this. Helmut Marko says, our boy, useless. We want to keep him around, though. We want to give him a shot. We said 4 races. So what's like a reasonable goal that you think Nick DeVries could attain that he has not yet in F1? That could show, like, progress forward. Like for Yuki, it was that move to like closer to home, like focusing up more on spending time with the team, and he came out of that break, or maybe not that, maybe it wasn't a break, maybe it was the following year after his rookie year when he moved closer to the team. His second year in Formula 1, he really kind of made steps forward. So do you think there's a similar change that Nick DeVries could make that would show kind of the organization like, all right, like there's something here?
There's probably some behind the scenes things like just putting in extra hours on the simulator or things like that maybe would show his dedication. But I, at the same time, have no idea what his schedule and his normal practice looks like. But maybe some things like that. I think if I'm in their position, saying this before this past race, I would say I want him to beat Yuki 3 times, including qualifyings and races. So I would just want him, so he could out qualify Yuki 3 times and maybe just doesn't quite have, or he could beat Yuki in the race 3 times, or out qualify Yuki twice, beat him in the race once. So I think that's what I would have wanted maybe as a thing, is like Yuki's driving very well, very consistently. I would like to see him, and ideally on merit, beat him out.
Yeah, not some kind of like engine shenanigans or like
Right.
wet weather, like crash out or something.
Yeah, so
Of course.
some legitimate way of him, like, not just, yeah, Yuki's car dies or something else. Someone just sends it into to him on the first turn.
Yeah.
So I think that would have been what I would look for. And so I'm not really sure, of course, like I said, all the background stuff and all, but I think getting a point might be just a little too far out of reach.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just looking at his results. Closest he comes to points is P12 in Monaco. And we know Yuki is a couple places average above that, right? So
Pretty
if the
much,
goal
yeah.
would be to beat Yuki either in, a quali or a race, whatever would be better. Yeah, it seems pretty unattainable currently.
Yeah, so I would hope that he can show. I think the progress I'd want to see is like competition with his teammate. Because, like I said, Yuki's been driving really well. He's been consistent this year. So if Nick can take a couple of those head to heads off him, I'd be like, okay, like let's think this through again
For
and
sure.
decide. But yeah, I guess we'll continue to watch and wait and see if Nick can turn some of these performances around going into these upcoming races. But staying in the Red Bull kind of family, moving over to Red Bull themselves from AlphaTauri, there was news that they hired a Ferrari engineer, Angelo Rossetti, who has been working on the Ferrari engines for the new engines, I guess, that are for the 2026 regulations,
Okay.
which is pretty big because I think in particular for Red Bull, for one, this guy was looking to be hired by Mercedes, and Red Bull out offered them and got him on board.
Well,
But two, Red Bull and
budget
Christian,
cap.
well, we'll see. Lots of catering, man. But Christian Horner has recently also kind of said that he's a little concerned about the 2026 regulations, and not just entirely, like, there's more to it than just like he doesn't think Red Bull, or he thinks Red Bull's kind of behind on the planning, taking over their powertrain and everything for that upcoming engine regulation and all. But I think in general he has other concerns, but like I imagine that's part of it. So this
Yeah.
might help them shore up some of those kind of weak spots that they feel like they have engineering wise for that engine in a couple years. So pretty big hiring for them. But then talking about kind of the upcoming plans and all, there was an article or an interview with Lewis this past week that he basically said he feels like the FIA should add a rule that teams cannot start developing their next year's car too early. So like set a date that you can start developing your car for the next season and all. Which that was my reaction too. I was like, Mercedes definitely started planning for their new car and like developing their car early a bunch of years. So I don't know about that one. But also it's Christian Horner, I think, commented on it and was like, how are you supposed to regulate that? It's like another one of those, like, things that you just really can't regulate that well. How are you supposed to stop an engineer from thinking about these designs and things for future cars and everything? Like, whether you actually develop them or not, or if you develop things and say they're for this car, but they're like something that you could also use for a future car or whatever. It's
Of
like
course,
there's
yeah.
no like actual line that you can draw there, I feel like, that would hold any weight. So
Yeah, or give any yeah, that's actually probably just the best phrase for it. Yeah, yeah, hold any weight where yeah, you could write this limitation in, but the capacity for loopholes just sounds infinite for something like that.
yeah, and so like you're already like trying to close loopholes we talked about last week with like not letting teams use like design elements and information and data from other sections of their company. Already going to be next to impossible, and to add something like that in, that would be, I think, even more difficult. And also just on the kind of, in my eyes, like hypocrisy side, I know that Lewis wasn't the one who is making those decisions of when to start developing the next year's car, but
Yeah.
I guarantee for most of his years when Mercedes was just crushing out the championships, that they were not going, that Lewis wasn't going, well, hold up, guys. This isn't really fair to the other teams that are still trying to catch up this year, is it? Like that wasn't going on
Right.
either. So it's a interesting conversation, especially because like I'd be curious to hear anyone who thinks that you can, or if there is a way to regulate that kind of thing. I just think it would be next to impossible to do as a whole. So
Or it doesn't seem like it could be easily done without a lot of manpower and man hours involved to like to use their term, to scrutineer even the development of the cars. They have so much to worry about just on the weekends of like, are
yeah.
these motherfuckers cheating? Not like putting, rocket fuel in their cars to, send them down the lane. So yeah, I that would just be. It sounds like it would be very tough on the rules committee that would handle something like this.
Yeah, so not the most
Just the
possible
rebel
thing, but
win.
yeah. But talking about scrutineering this weekend, we had the
Let's
Austrian Grand
go.
Prix. And so to start off, Checo had been sick leading up into the weekend. He missed out on his media and all on, I think it was Thursday because of illness. And also that immediately had me a little stressed for him. I'm like, how's his weekend going to be? And it started out not great. We saw a number of drivers getting times and laps deleted for track limits in the qualifying session. He had 3 in Q2 and ends up finishing with a non-representative time, basically, and starting P15, not making it out of Q2. So four races in a row, not making it to Q3 in the actual qualifying. So I did kind of chalk that up a little bit to the very close eye that the stewards and marshals had on those white lines, but also to a little bit to some extent him having a rough week sickness wise and everything, and bouncing back.
Yeah, and I think you could even tell Christian Horner was pretty not happy on the pit wall during that qualifying session when Sergio got the, what would it be, the black and white flag, I guess, that, or
Yeah, or
whatever
just
deletes his time that he wasn't able to set. So yeah, that was big time unfortunate, but at the same time, it is something that a lot of drivers were doing. So you hate to see a driver kind of willingly continue to make the mistakes. Like, they were obviously getting the warnings in this. So yeah, I think just kind of bit of an unforced error, I think, from Sergio's perspective.
Yeah, and it definitely was. Like, the car is so fast. If he had just taken that tiny bit of extra time to
Yeah.
slow down a little sooner and not take the turns so hard, especially in 9 and 10. Those seem to be the biggest issues on the circuit for the
Hmm.
weekend. Then he would have had no issues, been into Q3 no problem, and then had another shot to put in a good lap. All he had to do was that for one of those 3 laps, because all of them were easily within qualifying for Q3. So if he had lost a little time taking it just a hair slower, then he would have easily qualified into Q3. So a tough spot for him. And then this weekend in the qualifying, we also kind of got to see a little bit of the difference between some of these drivers that have had upgrades to their cars as well that their teammates don't have. We saw Alex Albon the other weekend with the Williams upgrades when Logan Sargent didn't have it. We see this week the McLarens getting Lando the upgrades and everything for the car, and Piastri still waiting on those. And so just in that qualifying difference, we saw Piastri go out in Q2 starting P13, but Lando making it through into Q3, and then getting up to P4 start, which was awesome to see for McLaren.
Yeah, and I think pretty strong. Must be a massive confidence boost there for Lando in the car, where you spend so much time kind of in a slump. You're collecting data, just hoping it just gets better eventually, and then the upgrades get slapped on the car, and now you actually do have some pace. You are able to race with the Ferraris, kind of hold up a little more agency in the race, and that's just gotta instill a good amount of confidence. Unfortunate, like you said, for Piastri, doesn't have the upgrade yet, but I'm pretty sure, from my understanding, it's not that far behind
No, I
for him.
think
So,
I would imagine that he'll have it for still Silverstone.
oh, very good.
I would think usually it's like not far behind. They're like,
Hmm.
it's just the time that it takes to actually like manufacture the components and all. So
Hmm.
since they already had that design and have fabricated the parts once, then it should hopefully be not long till he has those, potentially this weekend. But yeah, definitely an interesting thing. Like when you get to see those bigger gaps, I think it was harder to tell when you're watching Albon and Logan Sargent, because Albon had been outperforming Logan all season, where with McLaren, Piastri had been really like staying pretty close on Lando in
Definitely.
the qualifying, and everything, and putting in some solid performances on his own. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that jump is for him as well once he gets those parts. I think he could put some good work in.
Yeah, and especially if they're able to have the same kind of results that they did this weekend. Yeah, it's just gonna be on the up and up for them. For the sprint race, the format a little bit different. Rush into Friday, where you qualify. The qualifying round on Friday just counts for Sunday. No way to improve your position, kind of like we were talking about with Sergio. But where I'm going with that, a lot of rain early in the weekend, but it just like dried out totally. So that kind of problem of data that we were talking about last weekend coming into Australia with the forecast of weather kind of does come into play, where we do have Friday running with wet practice, wet qualifying, except for, was it wet qualifying throughout the whole
Well,
thing?
not really. So qualifying was it? So it was like, I think mostly wet practice, then a pretty dry qualifying on
Okay.
Saturday,
And it was the wet start to the
or
sprint that I'm thinking of.
yeah, it was like drying out for qualifying because FP1 would have been not long before. So FP1 slightly wet, qualifying drying out, then for the sprint shootout and then sprint race, we had more wet weather. So the qualifying was a bit different for that from the qualifying the day before. Because we ended up seeing for the sprint race that kind of drying out as well partway through the race, where some of the drivers are switching onto the soft tires, some drivers switching on to or staying on the intermediates for the entirety of the race. So it was a kind of a different sprint race, which was like made it pretty decently exciting, I felt like, compared to other ones, because there was that potential to have to change tires, or is changing tires the right decision? We saw George Russell after a pretty tough qualifying in the sprint shootout, starting down in P15 for the sprint race, making his way up and getting that last point by switching to the soft tires at the right time and everything from the intermediates to be able to put in some fast laps and make that up. But yeah, I liked how that shook up the sprint race. I thought it made it a lot more interesting, the weather component.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate, kind of going back to Lando. That's where he really lost out, was the sprint race, the wet start going into, I guess it was like turn 3, where he gets kind of caught in that bunch up there and really loses out, drops down a bunch of spots. So yeah, that was pretty tough.
Yeah, and it was good to see him like not get stuck on that for the race. I mean, he qualifies P3 for the sprint shootout, and like you said, he just gets bogged down with Max and Checo kind of having that weird little squabble at the beginning, where he gets just kind of pushed back and back and back down the grid due to, I think he said his anti-stall came on because he had to like basically come to a full stop because of Checo and Max's like little fight coming around that turn. So to stop, the car like went so low on revs that it kicked in the anti-stall to be like, you make sure his car didn't shut off, and then it was like he was starting the race again, kind of engine wise.
Gotcha.
So yeah, really unfortunate situation for him. He almost gets a point there in the sprint race, but not quite. He turns it around for race day though. So and got some awesome points for McLaren.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening, especially in these sprint weekends, is there's so many sessions that the running like really matters. Where usually it's FP 1, 2, and 3. But yeah, there's so many sessions that matter. It's like it really does get kind of tough to like to keep it all straight. But yeah, it just feels like it's like bam, 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 bam all through the weekend. But it is quite exciting, especially when drivers are, with the sprint races. There's so much jeopardy. You qualify really well, get knocked back. Like that's a tough thing for the weekend, where otherwise like you just would have had a clean start just on Sunday and you would have been able to keep it moving.
Yeah, and like hopefully it doesn't like dilute the weekend too much, where there is so much that it's hard to like see. But it makes it interesting for a little bit extra for these weekends, which I don't hate. I just wish that all of the sprint weekends could be kind of like this, where there is a like potential need to like change the tires, where like if one tire can like barely make it to the end of the sprint race, but you have to kind of ease it, or you could take like this other tire and swap partway through. If there's something that could cause there to be a pit stop in the sprint race, I think it would just make those more interesting. I heard a number of other folks saying similar things, but I feel like that was the kind of the key to this, more so than the wet weather, because the track started drying up so quickly during the sprint race, that it was like, oh, if a team gets it right and switches to slicks at the right time, then it works. But also, if you wait too long on it and then try, you're gonna screw yourself. So you have to kind of like it brings that kind of preparation and planning and strategy into it a bit more than just let's see who can run the medium tires the fastest all the way through 25 laps. And
Sure.
that's it. So who would be leading by the first pit stop in the actual race? So I did like this sprint weekend a lot more. And it does add that extra excitement, but going into with the sprint finish. So just kind of recap that, we had Max finish P1. Checo, who after his bad qualifying on Friday had a very good qualifying for the sprint on Saturday.
Yep.
Starting P2, like we said, had that weird little squabble where he said he didn't see Max in his mirror as he ran him off the road, and then Max kind of elbows out next to him again, coming back through, and Checo was like, whoa, what's going on with Max? And Max is like, you just ran me off the road, bud. So interesting at the front, but Max is himself and finishes P1 with a decent gap to Checo behind him. I mean, pretty much a full pit stop at the end of the sprint race.
Yeah, and you have to kind of figure that's how it's going to be, unless Sergio is able to make a better, cleaner like attempt at taking the position. You know, if the first couple turns were a little cleaner, maybe another driver would have had a shot to change the outcome. But yeah, those Red Bulls are just pretty quick. Some of the other moments that I really liked from the sprint race, the battle between Ocon and Leclerc, kind of in the early stages of the race. I thought that was some great racing between them. Alonso just hunting down Lance Stroll the whole time, just really never able to get the move done. I thought that was some really fun racing to watch from him. And then you had Ocon showing up again right at the very end, just pedal to the floor, drag race to the line. Now, does he end up getting into the points for that? Was that the deal? Or did he just finish ahead of that car?
So that was in the race that he and Gasly drag raced to the finish.
Who am I thinking of in the sprint race? Because there was another like very close finish then too. That might have been.
Oh wait,
like
no, you're right. It was So it was Ocon and Russell.
There you go.
Yeah, because Stroll was, I think. Oh, I was just thinking because I guess the Alpine was right behind Stroll in the actual race. That was him, but no, it was George Russell and Esteban Ocon in the sprint race. There, 9,000th of a second difference. So
yeah, that's just like wicked exciting.
Yeah, and gotta give big props to Nico Hulkenberg again, picking up more points for Haas. It's just so weird, like, and difficult to tell because he's qualifying so well consistently, which is like bizarre when you see the race finishes and everything, but he has really been putting in some nice qualifying performances. Qualifies P4 here in the sprint race, and then finishes, just slides down to P6, so gets 3 more points under his belt, which is big in that head-to-head as teammates and all. That is extended the gap pretty decently from a 6-2 points lead to 9-2 points lead for Hulkenberg.
Gotcha. That's not looking so great there for Magnussen.
Yeah, so definitely makes it interesting because Magnussen has finished ahead of him just about as many times as he's finished ahead of Magnussen, minus like just the races that Hulkenberg beats him. He just beats him by a good bit and gets those points. So a great weekend overall from Hulkenberg, even to just pick up 3 points in the sprint race, because he was not so fortunate in the feature race there with his engine going kaput and ending up with an early DNF for Haas.
Yeah, and it's a shame to see kind of these highlights and lowlights right on the same weekend. You see a lot of promise, and then very quickly, like, oh shit, not quite here yet. So yeah, I think Haas is a team you like to see improvement from. You like to see them gathering these couple of good results here and there, but yeah, definitely with reliability issues, it's not going to be. We're not going to see a pattern of this.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that was the outlier just in terms of engine. He'll have a fresh engine next race, and also hopefully the Hulkenberg performances will continue, because I've enjoyed seeing him do well coming back into F1. I think there had been lots of question marks, and then it's been competitive, and so now I feel like he's getting really into his comfortable kind of zone there and is looking pretty solid now for Haas. But looking at the main race and all, we have to talk about the track limits a little bit here, and the amount that kind of affected everything. We saw everyone going off. We saw Lewis complaining about everyone going off while he's getting warnings and all as well. We had a protest from Aston Martin after the race to review the results, which I found pretty wild just looking at this, because so the race control had to review about 1,200 times that cars potentially went off track to see if they did or not. And so between all the turns and laps and everything, I'm assuming a ton of those were at turn 9 and 10, but the track limits were breached 83 times on about 6% of the laps, which would be, I think, like 9 laps or so.
Okay.
And then only 2 drivers did not get any track limits issues.
Whoa.
So George Russell and Zhou Guanyu were the only 2 that didn't have any issues.
There you go, Joe.
Half the grid got a penalty. 10 out of the 20 drivers ended up with that. And I assume that is improved by Hulkenberg not having more than 12 laps to potentially get a penalty. So he's one of the 20 that didn't. But I mean, he didn't have a chance, really. So,
jeez.
So yeah, a pretty wild race. And so looking at it, I don't know really if there's a solution to this. The FIA was talking to the Austrian Grand Prix about adding gravel tracks like closer to the edge of the circuit to make it more penalizing for people running off and all. And so there's like some solutions in a sense, but I think it's kind of one of those interesting things that you had brought up at way back, where it's like the cars are so fast. Sometimes it seems like the cars are too fast for the circuit because the drivers are able to make these turns sort of, just not staying within the limits by like these fine margins. So it's like, what is the solution? Like, do people just need to tone it down a little bit, or do the tracks need to change, or whether that's change in a way that you widen the track so people aren't getting track limits for what they were doing, or penalizing it for people who do by adding gravel trap and all. But it was funny. I saw something from Lando that he said after the race, when Aston Martin got this reviewed and everything, that Fernando texted him, and I forget what he said. It was something like, "Oh, like you're gonna get in trouble." It was like, I think he texted Lando the word "busted," like you're busted, and because he kept saying, and then Lando didn't end up getting a penalty from the review and everything. We saw Esteban Ocon go from 0 penalties during the race to setting a record in time penalties in one race, getting 4 after the fact. With
Wild.
2 10-second penalties and 2 5-second penalties for track limits.
So what did he finish then? So he was...
So he got 30 seconds of penalties. So
brutal.
Yeah.
Is that not twice now that he's got slapped this year with just ridiculous penalty times?
Yeah. So
this guy, what a criminal.
He dropped back a little ways there from where did he end up? He ended up
P14.
in P14, and I think he would have been close to the points if I don't know if he would have been in them. But just a tough day, and he and his engineer were on the radio like at the end of the race, being his race engineer was like, it was a mixed race, awful lot of penalties, and Ocon's like, not us, and his engineer's like, yeah, well done on managing that, no penalties for us. And then he gets slapped with 4 after the race.
Brutal, man.
Which is like, now it is the record for most driving penalties in an F1 race now.
That's sweet.
So he got a record out of it. Not one that I imagine anyone would want to hold, but
the infamous Esteban Ocon.
Yeah, just brutal for him. But we did end up seeing Lando moving up position, with Carlos Sainz getting 10 seconds of penalties after the race, dropping him down. So we had a couple of shifts in that top 10. So a lot. And then, of course, with looking at the AlphaTauris, Yuki had a atrocious race. Nick DeVries did beat him in the race, so maybe you count it, but Nick also got 15 seconds of penalties after the race, and Yuki got 5. Ooh. So it's like, there's still, even with him doing what I was saying I would be like looking for from him, he still like has a smudge on that, even while being successful at the thing that I'm like, this would be what you need to do to keep on keeping on. Well,
that's what's so funny about that question is like, yeah, like you want to say this for the eye test, but it's even even when they're accomplishing this thing, it like doesn't feel good enough. And you're like, what can they actually do then?
Yeah, which is it kind of does leave you grasping at straws, but maybe he'll have a great little run of performance into the summer break and all. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's so crazy. Do you have any like what were you thinking looking at all these track limits issues and everything and the complaining on the radio and all? Like I'm not sure. Maybe gravel traps is the solution, but at the same time I'm just like that could just like knock people out of the race for small mistakes as opposed to where it's at with penalties and all. But that was just excessive.
Yeah, it's excessive, but I also think it's a cheaper strategy than digging up that track and like repurposing a full corner, in the sense that if as the FIA they show like a really no fucks given attitude towards these drivers complaining about like, yeah, but I just want to go a little faster. Like if FIA just doesn't give a shit and doesn't budge and says like, yeah, we're willing to take this rough look for like from the community where yeah, maybe we're being a little nitpicky, maybe we're like being a little like magnifying glass to the ground and saying like, no, you were off, right? But this does set a precedent, hopefully, where maybe next year coming into Austria with this iteration of the FIA, the teams will say like, yeah, we're not gonna fuck with that again. So Ocon, you better stay within the track limits. I don't care how fast you think you can go. You gotta come off it in that corner just a little bit. So I think there's some of that going on where it's like a power play from the FIA to say like, no, these are the rules. And it's the teams it feels like that are trying to kind of push back and say, yeah, but I mean, what's a millimeter? What's a millimeter?
Yeah,
That's a slippery slope, homie. So I think
it is.
I think it is this feeling from the FIA of like, we got to put our foot down. It is a good first step before maybe taking a look at some of these other more aggressive options, like resurfacing corners, putting a different kind of runoff there, maybe changing it to grass instead of this curb that you can just like, just sail onto. It's a fine choice, I think. From the driver's perspective, it's kind of silly in a way where this is happening and they're not willing to work it into their strategy to like avoid it. It's literally like ruining weekends here. So from that aspect, from the drivers, it's like, yeah, that's just y'all out here just being silly. Like why are you breaking rules? Like it's going to hamper you and your whole team. It's not just you, it's like the whole thing. But does it like take away from my enjoyment of like the weekend of the race? Like no, it just tends to be the complexion of that race, but it just kind of comes off more against the drivers rather than anything else, where it's like, come on, man, just basically just like the commentators say, like it's the white line, like just stay in it.
Right. And like that the amount of drivers that complained, I know I mentioned Lewis, but a lot of drivers, like Checo, when he got his times deleted during qualifying, was like, where? And they're like, exit of turn 10. And he's like, yep. And then I think Max even was like, yeah, it's like kind of hard to see those lines sometimes when you're going that fast. And it's like, yeah, but like that's like you said, that is the rule and all, and so for them to regulate it properly, I think that's the right move in the situation. It's just crazy that it was such a consistent issue, and it caught me off guard during the race when Toto like came over the radio to be like to Lewis to be like, yeah, like stop worrying about that. I know the car sucks. Like just drive. I was like, I heard Toto's voice and I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like he does not usually come on mid race to say much. So that surprised me a little bit, but then the other kind of interesting thing that I was curious your thoughts about was with Max pitting for the fastest lap. Like, what did you think about
go
that
for
move?
it.
Yeah,
That's high risk, high reward. Apparently, go for it. It's just the conversation that I find the most funny, where Max is like, "We've got a 24-second window, no." Right? Like making them say like, you have to let me do this. The time says it's possible.
It's like, you scared? Are you scared you're gonna mess up?
Yes, like that's what the moment felt like. So I loved it. I thought that was just like that was just funny to me.
Yeah.
But again, it's a question of that is exactly what you want to see out of your world champion. Like, if Max is your guy, that is what you want to see out of this dude. That is the most aggressive play that you can make in that moment. And everybody's going to be like, why risk it for a point? Do you know what the fuck you're watching?
Right. Or like other people I saw, and so the only person I feel it was the bad decision for one person that I know of, and my buddy had bet that Max would win the race by at least 10 seconds. And he was 24 seconds up, just cruising, pits, and then only finishes 5 seconds ahead of Leclerc. So he lost his bet on that. But otherwise, I'm like, yeah, like I saw some stuff this week about how it's on Twitter, like I don't know, you see all sorts of like garbage opinions. There are all these people that are like, Max doesn't even care when he wins. He's just so bored of winning. So like I'm so tired of him. I hate this. This is miserable. And it's like, this dude is so driven about what he's doing that he's just trying to crush everyone by saying, oh, we have the ability to run up the score, let's run up the score. Like, that is, that, like you said, that's the attitude that you should want out of really every driver, is like, oh, if I'm in a position to get an extra point, I'm taking it. Like, if I'm in, like, people were like joking about how Fernando was just waving to the crowd, letting Lance beat him in Spain and everything, when he could have probably beat him and got the extra point. It's like, Max sure as hell wouldn't have been doing that, waving to the crowd. He would have been gunning after his teammate and all. And so it's not that either one's necessarily wrong. Like, Max is far enough ahead that I don't think there's a shot that anyone's going to catch him without some catastrophic thing happening for the rest of the season. But at the same time, like, he had the time in hand. He's like, you guys aren't going to give me worse than like this won't be a 7-second pit stop. Like, I know it's not going to be. So get your asses out into the pits, the pit lane. Put your helmet back on, run out there with my tires. God damn it.
Well, and again, like, these are the things that I'm looking for. Did you see the dude in the background that was pushing the stage, the awards people?
Oh, yeah.
The after show people. He was like manhandling their setup, saying, get this the fuck out of here. There's a car coming in.
Because he was like, that would have been like the FIA issues in previous races where they're letting people onto the pit lane too early and all. He's like, the race isn't over.
Well, exactly. And like, that's the that is the
Honestly,
kind of complacency that people feel like is happening, where it's just like Max is the winner. Let's all just
that's their own issue, man.
yeah,
I'm here for it, and props to that guy for realizing that that thing
yeah,
was going to be in the way and being
yeah,
like,
yeah.
move this, because it like, I mean, we saw with what was it, Hulkenberg coming out of the pits in whether it was FP1 or one of the qualifyings, and he hit a tire that one of the engineers had in the way
Yeah,
and
that's
like
just
went up on
bad
the
spacing.
yeah, like you hate to see that kind of just unawareness, but for someone to be so aware of even that extra thing that's normally not there to be like, let's move this, like props to that
Yeah, that was
that
heads
guy.
up.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I felt like I mean, he's driving to be the best. Like
Hmm.
it's. I saw someone else say it's like that is his like fun for the race.
Right.
Like he's driving by himself for the entire race, just lapping people. Not really like yes, someone else led this race for a few laps because of the time that Max pitted, so it broke
Hmm.
his like unending streak of leading every
It was like
lap for however
540 laps or
is
something
just
ridiculous.
stupid
Yeah.
amounts of laps.
Yeah.
And so for that to be broke, he's like, I've been doing this whole the person I saw, they were like, in Max's mind, he's like, I've spent the entire race building this lead, so let me have my dessert. Like
Hmm.
I've made the lead big enough, so let me go for the fastest lap.
Yeah,
Like
no, that's a pretty good take on it. I like that.
yeah, when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like he's just out there cruising to a big victory. Um, so I was, yeah, I definitely did not hate seeing that. And for the weekend again, another kind of clean sweep, even bigger this time with the sprint race,
Hmm.
but being first in both qualifyings, first in the sprint race, first in the feature race with the fastest lap point. Just like a mega grand slam or something. I don't know, but he is driving just on another level this season.
Yeah, and it's even being that you have the teammate conversation available. It's like not even just like the car is insane where yeah, Checo has kind of the same car underneath him available, but he's not able to utilize it with the same kind of consistency and uh, maybe that's just the best word for it.
Yeah.
Consistency that Max is able to produce, and it's just kind of unreal to see. And whether you're a fan of Max or not, right or wrong, going for the fastest lap, it is on that rap sheet of qualities of these individuals that like they're gonna go for.
Right.
So yeah, it's like risky, but is it surprising? No, not at all.
No, I definitely agree with you, and especially the point about like that mindset. It's if you're gonna be the best, he's like, I'm gonna be the best that I can be. Like he's not gonna be like, oh yeah, like I'm crushing it. I'm getting the race win 5 in a
Hmm.
row. Like he's got to grind for something, and so he's giving himself at least something to shoot for, even if
Sure.
everything else is a little less exciting for him. But
Yeah, just dominating the standings currently. It is just going to be a race for P2 this year, obviously, just what we've been talking about. But yeah, just
yeah.
another lights out performance from Max and Sergio doing his best. I think salvaged his weekend. I think is like the best thing you could say.
And I
Big time
mean,
salvaged the weekend.
yeah, like after a P15 qualifying to have a P2 sprint and a P3
Yeah,
race finish, like
that's good stuff.
big time improvement from how he's looked the past couple weekends to get up there. Um,
Christian Horner's argument would be though, you shouldn't even have made it that close. You shouldn't have even fucked around
Oh yeah,
with the track limits thing.
yeah,
That was
because
his
he
argument.
should have been P2 in the sprint and in the
Just
race. Yeah,
hands down.
yeah, he
Yeah.
easily would have caught Leclerc if he had started inside the top 10. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all it would have
Sure.
taken, and he would have caught him. Because he did get stuck a couple of times after, like, pitting and everything and struggling to get through signs for a bit, I think it was, to on his way to that P3 during the race. But yeah, a improved weekend, but still some things to fix. The qualifying for Checo has to get figured out for sure.
Yeah.
But with the standings as of right now, we do have it's still like pretty tight from P2 to P4. Checo's up 17 points on Alonso. Alonso's up 25 on Lewis, so that 2 to 4 gap is only 42 points. Nothing too crazy. Leclerc is tied up with George Russell for that P6, P7 position in points, and Carlos is in P5. So we'll get a bigger recap, but yeah, I don't think I have too much more unless you had any other notes we want to hit for the race.
No, just I thought it was quite a dense weekend, but pretty fun weekend. I thought the race was quite an exciting one. Lot going on there, a lot of like kind of close battles, bunch of DRS going on. So yeah, I thought it was big fun. But coming up this weekend, we have the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, which is kind of to my understanding, it's been in the minds of the teams a little bit of a midway point in the season. They kind of look to that as a beacon of how we're really doing, where they've had a bunch of time to kind of hone things in and see what they've got going on. But it seems like teams believe that once they get to Silverstone, they'll really see kind of what their package has to offer, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and it seems because that is a reasonable amount of time into the season to have brought upgrades and solid upgrades to the cars. Sure. So it seems like that is the time frame that gives a pretty good idea of that and everything. But with the British Grand Prix, I'm excited. It should be a fun weekend. There's a lot of little extra kind of things going on for the weekend. We've got Brad Pitt and the filming for his movie Apex that's going to be happening at Silverstone this weekend, where he and whoever their other driver is are going to be driving like essentially like F2 cars in a like I think it's a closed like session with some of the other drivers out there.
Wild.
So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. They have their own garage in the pit lane this weekend with their little tags for the drivers and everything above the garage. So
that's sick.
So yeah, it'll be cool to see how that filming turns out. We've got a couple of custom liveries for the weekend. Williams has their 800th race livery that they're putting out, which has a cool it has the what is it called, the Union Jack flag in blue and white at the back of the car with an 800 on the side.
That's sweet.
A cool looking car.
I saw the McLaren Chrome concept.
Yep, and that's the other big one. So with McLaren, Google Chrome being one of their big sponsors, they're going with the Chrome, which also harkens back to their Chrome and red Vodafone car that they had, which would have been the one that Lewis drove for his first world championship. But I like the way they did it. I saw a lot of people comparing the two cars and being like, I don't know, but I think it's a cool take on it in the new era of F1, and the car looks pretty sleek in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just always find these like one-off custom liveries just to be really fun. It's like always interesting ways for the teams to kind of commemorate certain events or certain individuals or whatever they want to be celebrating and racing. Like I think of the Red Bull Japanese livery that they
Yeah.
did on their racing suits. Like that was fucking cool. So I really enjoy seeing these teams take the opportunity to mess with art and design and color and give us something new to look at in that regard. Even though it's like kind of low on my list of things that I enjoy about F1, I do find it fun to see when they do offer up these changes just to see what's going on, and some of the concepts are great. Like I really like the McLaren one.
Yeah, and I think I just don't see a point of like not having fun with it here and there. It's
Of
like
course.
it's like a third jersey for different other sports teams. Hockey, a bunch of the teams in the NHL have, if not all, have a third jersey that are like unique color palettes and logos and things, whether it's a throwback logo or just like a
That's
unique
neat.
one and all. And so it's cool to have those one-offs. Aston Martin, I'm not sure if this is going to be a one-off or a just new thing, but they have a slightly changed livery with their partnership with Valvoline, who is going to be like more prominently on their car and everything, with some blue, like blue and red from their logo on like the little fin that's behind the power unit, and little bits of red and blue on the side and on the front wing. So
Sick.
like some small changes and everything, but I think it's just all fun. So
Yeah, I agree. There's something like really futuristic about the AlphaTauri. I think of their tagline. What is it like? Form meets fashion, or like function meets fashion, or something like this. And I'm just like,
something
dude,
like that, yeah.
that's just a wild tagline for like a racing outfit, right?
Yeah.
So I really do appreciate the eye for um fashion. Yeah, fashion and
Yeah.
design. That's all you can say. It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. Like it gives just a little extra excitement to the weekend of like, oh, that's cool. I get to like see a new car design or like
Of course.
coloring and all. But
Yeah, I think it was last year for maybe one of the Grand Prix that was in Europe where Aston Martin did it was for the release of the James Bond movie where they did their like James Bond kind of themed weekend that they did. Like all that to me is just in great fun.
yeah, like why not? The paint
Ex-
the paint's weight is the same no matter what. So
no matter what color it is.
yeah, so I think it's pretty cool. But looking at the upcoming race, just to refresh on last year's race, it was a pretty wild one. Starting off with the Zhou Guanyu crash, where his car went tumbling and skidding across its
Yeah.
roof and all, through to Max thinking he had a puncture, but really it was just floor damage underneath the car that he was dealing with, dropping him back to seventh, and kind of fighting with Mick Schumacher for between P7 and P8 at the end of the race.
Yeah, bring Mick back.
There you go. Checo and Carlos kind of fighting towards, or I guess Checo trying to chase after Carlos at the end of the race with the small little crazy fight where Checo and Leclerc were going at it, and through goes Hamilton. So that was at last year's British Grand Prix. So
And this was Carlos Sainz's maiden victory in Formula One, correct?
It was.
There you go.
So a big weekend last year, and then of course this weekend it should be a fun-filled and good one overall. So
does Carlos Sainz do back-to-back Silverstone? I mean, he like looks to be in pretty good form. He's on the radio calling for the reversal. He's like, man, he is in the hunt, truly.
It would be tough. I just don't know if anyone is good enough, along with their car being good enough, to beat Max right now. Without something
just like a straight up race, without something bad happening. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you never know what could happen, and Carlos is putting himself in good. Carlos is putting himself in good positions, kind of to have that opportunity. We do have some rain potentially on Saturday for qualifying, so you never know. You never know. But
we know what we're talking about here, people.
Yeah, but a good weekend looking up. But before we move on to League of Legends chit chat and all, I did want to just mention Delano Vantoff, who unfortunately passed away during the F2 race at Spa this past weekend. Or it was a MP Motorsport race at Spa, and so that now is the second time in like 5 or 6 years that we've had an incident like that at Spa.
Same spot too.
Yeah, and so it definitely, and I know the FIA already has talked to the race organizers at Spa about potential changes to the track and all, but just wanted to pass on our condolences and well wishes to the family, because it's just we know motorsport is a dangerous sport to be involved in, but you never want to see anything like that happen. So definitely a sad highlight for the past weekend.
Yeah, I appreciated the moment of silence before the race in memory of the young driver Delano, and that was, I think, pretty touching and a good thing to do on the weekend. But yeah, that was pretty tough to hear, because obviously it's just bad news bears all around.
Yeah, and they'll be racing in Spa coming up. I know Lance Stroll focused on it in his post-race interview. Was not interested in talking about the race. So, yeah, I appreciate the things that they did through the weekend and what the drivers and all said, and hopefully that will bring around change that avoids these kinds of situations and in the future. Because yeah, it's just that it's not that serious. Like it's a sport, we love it, we enjoy it, but it's not worth that. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that before we move along into the League of Legends segment of the podcast.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good note to hit. But yeah, I think to move forward, not, to be crass, but one of the things that came out today, thinking about the LCK, one of the things that came out today is Faker is being listed as inactive due to current wrist injuries that he has. So he'll be subbed in for by a player named Poby. But yeah, Faker is on the bench for now, which, man.
Yeah, not something that I was expecting to see. I had not really heard about, or maybe I just am not tuned in enough to the LCK broadcast, but I was not aware that he was having these ongoing like wrist issues or anything like that. And then it highlighted itself in their match against DRX with Poby struggling and just the team as a whole struggling in that matchup. DRX's seventh place team, 8-14 overall, and 2-0's T1 in their matchup.
Brutal.
Poby goes 2-4-0 and then 0-4-2 in the two games. The rest of the team struggled heavily as well, but I assume the composition, like the player composition for T1, along with like comfortable champions and whatnot, probably made that a bit tougher on the weekend for him.
Well, and of course the whole T1 system relies on, I don't want to say it relies on because they've been good to do their best to play into different metas. Like obviously you saw when it was bot side meta, like Guma and Keria had no problem stepping up into the like carry role. But I just say like they must be a mid centric system, just in the sense like you have to wonder how much information is being fed through and by Faker in those games. And so I say this to say, one could imagine Poby could be the best player possible to slot in, but just based on the type of system that T1 would be working, they can't just like plug and play a player, especially from that key role, and just have, you know, and just have it work. Like the amount of synergy these players have to play well around the very particular like spawn, like Baron spawn timer takes, that they're able to put themselves around the Baron pit right around the time that it's spawning and capitalize, whether with a successful Nash take or turning the team fight and winning. But these are complex moves that I can't imagine are easy to do if you're not used to in battle communication with these other individuals. And oh my gosh, you just hate to see T1 without that element. Yeah.
Yeah, and not even just like that's definitely a component to it, is the comfortability with like those timings and the decision making on that level. But Poby is also, he's a 17-year-old who has just worked his way up through T1's like farm system basically to get here, and putting someone in that position compared to Faker, who has had over a decade now, I think, of professional experience and is considered to be one of, if not, well, the greatest or at very least one of the greatest players in League of Legends history.
Maybe not be the best currently playing.
Right,
I don't think you could say it
but
now.
Greatest of all time, career-wise and everything. That's just not someone who's easily replaceable, and so that's not a knock to Poby at all, but it will definitely have to adjust how the team functions and plays around that, because it's going to be they're gonna have to just kind of tough it out a little bit through these times. Fortunately, T1 has put themselves in a pretty good spot so far this season, where they're in playoff contention and all. They're not on the verge of not making it or anything yet. So fortunately, they have some leeway to kind of let Faker rest, work on those wrist issues and everything before he comes back in.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to a swift and safe recovery there for Faker. But God forbid he's not able to to play to the degree that maybe he would like to or whatever. It's just tough to see him struggling and then the organization struggling because of it. So yeah, I just thought that was a kind of a wild note that came out today. But one of the games that we took a look at here for the week was the KT Rolster versus Kwangdong Freaks matchup. Just wanted to take a look at what the other telecom team has been cooking up, and from the two games, not a full 3-0 series. Kind of the one thing that I wanted to focus on was the team fighting from KT, especially around the aiming Aphelios pick. They did very well in the, I would say, like mid to late game fights, especially around the dragon, to mark the threats to aiming either the Sejuani or the support there, just marking the threats that would be coming in towards aiming and kind of cycling through their abilities to be kind of bodyguards in front of. It was basically specifically Bulldog's LeBlanc that was continually marked on the flanks by Cuz and Keen's Renekton, where they just weren't, or I should say Bulldog wasn't ever able to get that double distort on top of aiming to really do the damage. And that just allowed him to just feel so free in the fights. You have Lehens there on the Alistair as well, big meat shield. So I think it really was this show of how to really team fight around this AD carry in these kind of river team fight scenarios where all of his front line was like playing for him in that way, and I thought that was really fun to see.
Yeah, and watching through, like, I was, my big focus was on BDD in the mid lane on Nico in
Sure.
both game one and game two. He played that so well in both games, and it really did highlight why that's been such a more contested pick recently. Because the pick potential was great, and I mean, I liked both drafts in game one. To be honest, I really felt like they both had good upside and all. The LeBlanc for Bulldog, Taeyun on the Kaisa, that's becoming one of those more popular picks, especially when like the Zaya or the Draven or Tristana are banned out. When you're getting down to those champions, the Kaisa's a solid pick. But like you said, with Cuz and Lehens on the Sejuani and Alistar, being able to protect their carries and all from the flanks of Bulldog on LeBlanc, that was huge in game one. I would say looking into game two, though, I was not as impressed from Kwangdong Freak's side of their draft in particular. I felt, just initially looking at the comp, I just was concerned about the damage, especially after game one with the Sejuani pick and the Nico pick getting to make picks and blow people up to start fights and everything. Looking at BDD on the Nico and then some of the other engaged potentials, especially from KT Rolster, I was very concerned about Zaya and LeBlanc being really your only sources of damage in that game two comp. The Poppy flex pick, I know you're trying to like spice things up, catch them off guard a little bit, but when the other team has a Vi and a Nico and a Nautilus and a Cassante, all of this disruption, CC, engage, and everything, I was like, I don't know if the Flex Poppy is quite the pick to go with there, as opposed to something like the Renekton or another good top lane pick. I don't think the Renekton got banned out there. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah, Renekton got banned by
Okay,
Red Side on second phase.
gotcha. Okay, so it did get banned out, but I just the top lane swap of the Poppy, I just was not super impressed with. Because just too much tank, not enough DPS on Kwangdong Freak's side. Looking at their draft initially.
Yeah, especially in the sense of like, who else are you going to be able to pop other than the Kaisa, where like you're never going to be able to deal any type of meaningful damage to Cuz, Keen, Lehens, or BDD. I just like BDD just isn't your target for Bulldog.
Yeah.
So barring a really solid engage there from Bulldog, I think aiming stays really safe in that game too. And honestly, like the draft doesn't even end up mattering. They literally just win the 2v3 in the bottom lane, like
Yeah.
right in the early game.
Well,
Lehens just walks up, smacks the Zaya, and then for the flash hook later, like it was very well played by the KT Rolster bottom lane. But that was all they needed to just like, all right, cool, bottom side's ours. We'll just convert this now.
well, that's why I feel like the draft matters even more because by essentially making it impossible to kill your mid lane. Mid lane's LeBlanc. LeBlanc can flash away. She can dash away. As long as she doesn't waste her W, you have that escapability. Your top side is not killing anyone. Sejuani and Poppy are not gonna be like dominating Vi and Cassante. So you're forcing yourself into a position where your bot lane is the only like sensible focus point for the other team. And so KT was like, oh, like all we have to do is fuck up these guys. Cool.
Gotcha.
And so you send Cuz down to the bot lane, getting the double kill with the aiming and Lehens on the Kaisa and Nautilus. And then you send BDD down there again just to add insult to injury. And really make it impossible for Taeyun and June to have any way of getting back into the game. So it like they're I completely agree with you with their like the way that they played it. It made it so inconsequent or seem so inconsequential. But I feel like the drafts like KT was like, oh yeah, this is how we take advantage of their draft and did it seamlessly.
Sure. No, I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Where if they would have, you make different draft choices, your game gets a little bit easier. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, but I think Kwangdong looked much better in game one than they did really in game two there. So kind of put their best foot forward to start out with and then petered out.
Yeah, and like you said, game one they held even in gold all the way through to 28 minutes. Game 2 doesn't even make it to 28 minutes. So a solid performance from KT as a whole. I think the biggest issue I had really for Kwangdong was their draft. I think they just put themselves in a hole in game 2 after a solid first game.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. That Poppy flex was like, it just seems silly.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like it was super worthwhile for their picks. It didn't work out phenomenally for them as a whole. So KT Rolster, as you said, the other telecom team, they are not having any struggles this split so far. They're 7-1 up in second place, just behind the 8-0 Gen G. So a really solid start to them for the summer season as well.
Yeah, we're about halfway through the summer split here for the LCK. Just really looking ahead towards Worlds and what that tournament will be here. Coming up towards coming up towards the end of the year. but we'll have some LCK and some LPL games next week. I just want to make some comments on what I'm going to be paying attention to coming up as far as esports goes. We've got IM Cologne at the end of July. This will be post player break for Counter-Strike. Whether we'll be on CS2 or not, who knows? I'm not sure. I'm not sure when and how they can make that announcement or whatever, but either way, no matter what, I will be looking forward to IM Cologne. That kicks off at the end of the month, and then right as that tournament is ending, we have Valorant Champions August 6th. That'll be the culmination of the competitive Valorant year, which just every time their tournaments are quite exciting. So I'll definitely be tuned into that. So we have a decent amount of competition coming up here for your, major esports fixes.
There we go. So, and from, like we said, July into August, we've got a little bit of that summer break for F1. So we'll have some time to fit in other sports in that time for, or esports into that time frame as well. So
Yeah,
looking forward to checking those out. But were there any other notes before we hit the flavor of the week?
No, I hit most of the MTG conversation there at the top of the show, but I'm looking forward to hear what your flavor of the week was.
Yeah. So for this week, my flavor of the week for food. Yesterday, 4th of July, you got to do it. We had I made burgers and hot dogs for dinner. So
American
I did
classic.
a couple of little 2 patty smash burgers for Colleen and I. And then made a couple of hot dogs. So I'm not like the biggest burger and hot dog person, but it was the right time. I'm like, hey, this will do it for me for a little bit.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, just an American classic there. For my music this week, so I wandering through TikTok came across a very talented artist. Her name is Young Miko. She's a Latina trap / rap artist. I believe she's from Puerto Rico.
Whoa.
And her songs are just they sound so good. And it's the flow from the Spanish. I just wish that I understood it a little bit more. So it made me be like, maybe I should break my Duolingo out a little bit more.
There you go.
But I mean, she seamlessly also throws in English words back into Spanish, with her flows and all, just seamlessly. And she just is really solid. I was very impressed with what I saw. I listened to a little bit more afterwards and was like, oh yeah, this, she's really just putting out some solid music and all. So that impressed me a good bit. So Young Miko, check her out. Solid artist, especially if you can understand Spanish better than myself.
Oh, yeah.
But I
There
still enjoyed it. And then for my visual medium, I've been sort of watching / rewatching Black Lagoon, which is an old anime. I have watched it before, but I was very inattentive when I was watching it previously. So
Gotcha.
I remembered the concept and all, and I remember bits and pieces, but it was not locked into my memories. And it's a solid anime, so I'm enjoying rewatching through that.
Sweet.
So Black Lagoon, and that is my flavor of the week for this week.
The movie that I have this week for you, turns out I have seen before. I wasn't exactly sure if I did, but we're getting to the close of the Fast series. Me and Sarah watched 8, Fate of the Furious, and this is where it gets actually kind of cheesy. You
How'd
get
they spell
the
fate?
I'm pretty sure just FATE. I don't think there was an 8
Oh,
in
it should
there.
just be F and then the number 8.
Right. No, I agree. I think it would be too easy to say like Fast 8 or like F8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, who knows? That's not for me. But yeah, it is it's probably the cheesiest one yet. Um, but they increasingly go like they up the scale of like vehicle nonsense. We have them like jumping out of helicopters and stuff, like jumping them through like the Dubai buildings and shit. So like, yeah, we get it. But yeah, a lot of cheese on this one. So of course that means I'm very excited for the next one. Just can't wait to just pop
So
that.
good.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be great. I think 9 has John Cena in it.
I think so.
So I'm excited to see how he comes into the story. But yeah, it's just big fun. Dom's kid gets named Brian at the end, so you're like, yeah, you get the. It's all good stuff. Can't wait for 9. My food here this week. I love oven made fries. We just keep bags of them in the freezer. You
Yeah.
just throw them in the oven, bro. Because most of the time, and this is like the true like health win of it, most of the time my craving for fast food is just the fries, and I just
Ah.
want to dip them in something and just jam them into my face. But it's mostly like the dipping sauce on a fry. That's really just what I want. I don't
Yeah.
want the Big Mac, but I get the Big Mac because it comes
Because,
with.
right, like you're not going to just go get fries.
Exactly.
Right.
So this has pretty much like curbed my like fast food eating, like almost 100%. Where now it's just like you just throw a little bit in the oven and you get your fry fix, and it's not as unhealthy of an option. Yes, I understand that it's still a fried potato, but it's not as bad.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have an air fryer?
No, we don't. We have talked about it though, so that could be a 2024 purchase.
Love me a good air fryer, and that's how we do our fries. Like
There you go.
we will add a little bit of oil to them before throwing them in, just to but usually it's like we'll make truffle fries, so we'll add a little bit
Yeah.
of truffle oil and like whatever else, and also those, yeah, I big fan of those as well.
Yeah.
The
Great.
especially the shoestring. I like the skinny fry, big skinny fry guy.
Yep, I'm right there with you. So yeah, you know all about the homemade fries, and then my music here for the week. We're gaming, brother. We are just in the bayou like crazy, and for the new event, I guess. So I think the deal is there's like a group of people that work at the company that are musically inclined that they have
Ah.
do the music for the game.
Oh, that's
With
cool.
this new event, it it sounds as though they had these individuals do another song. I believe it's called Whispers of the Dead, and it's like, themed around this like kind of spooky boat, swampy kind of vibes, and it just like really sets the tone of the event, brings you into the rain, kind of in a beautiful way. So really digging the new song, digging the vibe, and yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. But that's my flavor of the week.
Nice, solid. And of course, as always, that brings us to the end of the episode. But we really do appreciate everyone taking the time to listen with us, hang out. Let us know what your flavor of the week is. Let us know what you think about any of the upcoming races, about Nick DeVries. Is he keeping his seat? Isn't he? Who's coming in? We'd love to hear it. So you can hit us up on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one, or find us on YouTube. Leave some comments. Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the places. Check us out.
Yeah, just tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. You know where to find us. Just thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in week after week. But yeah, it's been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.